Amendment by Berry.
The chair recognizes Mr. Berry to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Speaker and members. Today I come to you to discuss a little bit about House Bill 3321 and the amendment that I propose to not allow the bill to move forward unless the state contributes the gap in the actual funding for TRS. We all understand and we believe that TRS is vital to our teachers and the health of their long-term benefits, and it's an actual benefit to those individual teachers that want to have a long-term career, and in many cases, some of these teachers are retired for more than 20 years. So we need to make sure that TRS is worthwhile and it's a solid, upstanding benefit for those teachers. For that reason, I would urge you to support this amendment. The other thing about this amendment is, when in investment history have we ever paid a benefit based on the lowest salary, but yet paid out a benefit based on the highest salary? That's inverse to what we all know about investment opportunities in the state of Texas and the United States in general.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Leo Wilson, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yield for questions.
The gentleman yields.
Representative Berry, where did you get this amendment?
Where did I get the amendment?
Yes. Did anyone help you with it, or
It was an amendment that TRS approached me with.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so the head of TRS will always oppose any bill that takes money out of the TRS. That is their job.
And I guess the point is that
But-
why
but
are we
no-
taking money out of TRS?
Well, but have you read the Legislative Budget Board, the actuarial impact statement on this bill? It states that funding should be adequate to amortize it over a 30-year period. Did you read that?
I did.
Okay,
And what
it also
precedent are we
says
saying by taking money out of
It al-
TRS
it also-
when we're working to fund TRS fully?
it also says that TRS is actuarially sound with an amortization period of 28 years. Did you read that?
Correct. Yep, I sure did.
Okay, and you're aware that TRS fund is $210 billion, and this is a $13.5 million per year.
I understand, but I also understand that TRS actually looks at income associated in participation from all their new teachers and existing teachers to calculate what their vesting schedule will be in the future.
Mr. Berry, that is a drop in the bucket in a multi-billion-dollar fund.
$800 million in the next 30 years is not a drop in the bucket.
On a $210 billion fund.
Quite frankly, I don't care if it's a dollar. I do not want to see TRS unfunded in any way,
You
shape,
know
or
that I am a
form.
member of TRS. That is my retirement.
I understand you're a member of TRS.
Okay, so I would be very concerned about this bill if the Legislative Budget Board came back with an impact statement saying that there were issues, but it said that funding is adequate.
Do you believe that the legislature should take money from TRS?
Well, they sure are in HB2. So did you file this amendment on HB2?
I did not. I don't know how they took money from TRS in
Well,
HB2 because we're
but
giving
that-
teachers
well-
pay raises in HB2.
Correct. And that impact to the fund, they actually have testified that will create an actuarially unsound fund, and that the legislature will have to come back in the future and take care of that.
I think they testified in appropriations, of which I sit on, that it's not going to negatively impact the actuarial soundness of the
Representative
TRS.
Hinojosa said the opposite the other day. But did you listen to Representative Gervin Hawkins' testimony, in which she made it very clear that when a charter school employer has to contribute more than the 2% than that of which ISD public school employers pay, the end result is taking money out of charter school classrooms?
What I will tell you about that comment is charter schools do it right and public schools do it wrong. We are paying into TRS on a public school, from a public school teacher standpoint, on their minimum salary in perpetuity as long as they're a teacher. But that's not what this. But yet paying out based on their highest 3 years of pay. There is a gap and a funding gap there that is obvious. And so any investment strategy, I don't care if you're in a 401k, an IRA, or
but that would
whatever
be
it
a
is.
different bill. That's not this bill. This bill corrects
not
a
this
funding adjustment It's been an injustice to our public school charters. What's your objection to ensuring that these children have just as much money dedicated for their classrooms as possible? Because that's what this bill would do. You and I also had a conversation about the Legislative Budget Board and that impact statement on TRS on HB2 right after Representative Hinojosa brought this up on the testimony on her bill, on this bill. We talked about that, and we talked about how that situation would eventually create an unsound fund due to the $3 billion state cost of the teacher pay increases in HB2. And at some point in the future, we'll have to correct that. But did you vote no on HB2 because of that?
So my point is this. You just made a statement saying that you knew that there was a deficiency in HB2, but yet you want to correct it in the future.
Did you vote no on HB2?
I did not.
Okay. Why did you vote yes if you're truly concerned about TRS being actually sound?
Members, please do not talk over each other.
Why did you vote yes if you're truly concerned about TRS being actuarially sound? Why didn't you file an amendment on that bill?
I voted yes for HB2 because teachers are getting pay raises, which would increase the amount funded to TRS.
Please confine your remarks to the amendment before the body.
There you go.
Last session, we did a TRS COLA to increase for our retired teachers. Do you remember that?
Please confine your remarks to the amendment before the body.
But that does relate to this bill because we authorized the $3.3 billion to fund those COLAs, and we ensured that they did not impact the pensions fund valuation. We care about our retired teachers, and your amendment gives the impression that we won't take care of them when we have. And it's worrying elderly teachers who are relying on this fund. There is no impact statement here that says that this will harm the fund. Help me understand why you would do amendment on this bill when it clearly has no significant impact on the fund.
I was very clear on what my amendment does. My amendment makes sure that not a single dollar is taken out of TRS, and to make sure that the state trues up the fund in the event that we decide to take money out of the fund. So we make sure that the funding is there in perpetuity for this bill. And if it's not, the bill is not in effect.
But the reason we're not doing this is because this has no impact on the soundness of the fund, where when we did the COLA, it did.
Everything has an impact, whether it's today, tomorrow, 30 years, 50 years, or 100 years from now. We may not see it today, and it may not affect the fund now. It may not affect it in 10 years, but if this $13.5 million per year continues to perpetuate over the long term, it has an $806 million effect on the fund. And I don't know which teachers at some point, I tend to agree with you. I don't think that the fund will actually have a negative impact, or it won't actuarially be sound. But the point is we have new teachers coming into this program every single year, and the precedent that we're setting today says that it's okay to fund TRS based on the minimum salary, but yet pay out on the highest salary.
But my point is that you're worried about $13.5 million a year. And you're filing an amendment on this one, but you're not worried about $3 billion impact on another bill. That to me is hypocritical. Do you recognize that charter schools are public schools, their teachers are public school teachers, and the children that they serve are public school students?
I'm happy to have that conversation about HB2 with you any day.
Do you like charter schools?
I like charter schools, and I think they serve a valuable purpose in the state of Texas. And I think, in fact, we need to make sure that we fund TRS for the benefit of our teachers long term.
Oh, I absolutely agree as a TRS member.
So why do you want to take money out of TRS?
So does the teacher pay raises. I am just stating to you very clearly that we have had statements that this does not affect the soundness of the fund. So we don't need this amendment. Thank you.
Representative, why did you
Ms.
file this
Hinojosa,
amendment?
for what purpose?
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, will the gentleman yield?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Yield for questions.
The gentleman yields.
Why did you file this amendment, Representative?
For the soundness of the fund over the long term. Pure and simple.
Okay.
I don't believe that we should take money out of TRS for anything.
We're borrowing
to-
against the future, are we not, if we pass this bill? It's one thing to do it for a teacher pay raise and school finance that affects public schools and charter schools and
The
everybody.
gentleman's time has expired.
Move to extend.
Members, you've heard the motion. Is there objection? The chair hears none. The gentleman's time is extended.
But this bill is only for charter schools, and isn't it correct that it doesn't impact the amount the teachers pay in, only the amount the employer pays in
That is correct.
under this bill? And my final question to you, do the retired teachers or TRTA oppose this bill? Do the retired teachers oppose this bill if this amendment doesn't get on?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Hayes, for what purpose?
will the member yield to questions?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
I yield for
The
questions.
gentleman yields.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. I heard you say that charter schools are doing it right, public schools are doing it wrong.
That is
Yeah.
correct, based on
Okay.
basic investment strategy.
All right. And why are the charter schools doing it right?
Because charter schools are paying the salary, the 2% based on their current salary, not based on the minimum.
Okay. And that's what the public schools are doing. They're doing it on the minimum.
They're doing it on the minimum only.
Okay. Now, in looking for a solution to this injustice or disparity, your thought is the state of Texas should contribute those additional funds into TRS. Did I hear that correctly?
That's right.
Wouldn't another solution be that the school districts back it up? The school districts contribute the money into the fund going forward.
That's right.
Okay. Well, it seems to me that's a better solution, Mr. Berry, that the school districts will just take that other percentage that they're required, spread it around the straight, the $13.5 million or whatever, and contribute that going forward.
I think I don't disagree with that necessarily. I think it's a conversation we need to have in the interim to make certain that there's equitable treatment for all institutions. We have our ISDs, we have our charter schools, and higher ed doesn't pay into it at all. So there's three different sets of rules, and I understand that this bill is trying to establish a consistency between public school or ISDs and charter schools, but I think we're going the wrong way. I think that we're moving in a negative direction, and at this point it's $13.5 million. I think what we need to do is figure out how we can get public schools to contribute more and more closely to their current salary, not necessarily the minimum only.
Well, I thought that's what this bill did. It was going to change it from the minimum salary for ISDs to their actual salaries.
Well, it actually takes the charters and it goes backwards.
Okay, all
So-
right.
That's right. So it reduces the amount that the charters would pay into TRS by $13.5 million a year.
So the better solution is everybody be paying in on actual salary.
I agree, yes.
And
I
if that
think
was
so.
going to be paid in by actual salary, that would then again be by the school district, not the state of Texas.
That's right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Move passage.
Mr. Tepper, in opposition to the amendment.
First, I appreciate Mr. Berry. He did not blindside me, or we talked about this. I reject the amendment. It essentially guts the bill, but I appreciate his professionalism in bringing it before me. And I respectfully ask to vote against the amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Dr. Bonham, for what purpose?
to ask a few questions.
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
I will yield for questions.
The gentleman yields.
Thank you. Representative Tepper, there's been a lot of conversation about this, so I just want to ask you a few questions so that we're all clear, hopefully, to the extent we can be, on this amendment and on your bill. So at the present time, when it comes to the TRS payroll tax, what do the public districts pay?
Everyone pays 2%, but the public school districts pay 2% on the minimum salary schedule.
Okay, and then what do the charters pay?
The charter schools pay the actual payroll, which is a higher percentage.
So the full amount.
The full amount. So I'm simply trying to get them on the same levels.
That's right. And so we think the discrepancy here cumulatively for the charters is about $13 million a year. Is that correct?
13.5.
Yeah, okay. And so from an actuarial standpoint, are you aware of the things we're doing this session that would have the biggest impact on the TRS pension?
This is not the biggest impact we have
Yeah.
done this session.
So I think the biggest concern that we have is the very large increase in teacher pay. And do you understand the reasoning behind that?
The higher teacher pay, the higher impact to the
Yeah,
retirement
so what
account.
happens is that when we raise that pay, you will have teachers that haven't been paying in at that rate who will then retire in the coming years, and that will impact the actuarial soundness of the pension in a much larger way than anything that you're proposing in this bill.
Certainly, this bill would not impact to that level.
And if you were advocating, and it was your full-time job, just for TRTA, would you not raise this concern? In other words, are they not paid to do this?
They, I think, have had a couple of very good years, and I'm not sure this is
Yeah.
one of the issues to wage
Yeah,
war
so I
over.
think the point is that they have an obligation to make note of this, but it is actually not a significant factor when we consider the future of that pension relative to other changes that are taking place. So essentially, is it true that this is essentially a weaponization of the pension against charters?
I know that there has been a rivalry between the charters and the public schools at times. I try not to question people's intentions on these issues. But if you want to treat the charter schools in a more fair way, I believe that this bill does that.
Right, so if you wanted to treat the charters the same as other public schools, then you would oppose this amendment and support your bill. Is that correct?
It is correct that I oppose this amendment, yes, sir.
All right, I'll be supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Gonzalez, what purpose?
will the gentleman yield for questions?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Would you feel comfortable, Representative, that we take the word traditional public and charter out the way and just say we're trying to support educators?
We are trying to support educators.
So when we're trying to support educators, that's when they're both under the public space. Would you agree with that?
I agree. And ma'am, I would like to adjust my last answers. We're trying to support children and their parents and the education of them to start.
Well, but when we talk about retirement, we're talking about specifically our educators.
That
And
is
s-
correct.
And so when we're talking about our educators, if we're not paying, if the public charters are not paying that high rate, we now can use those resources in the classroom for social emotional support,
The-
more instructional materials.
Yes, I would like to see the money be used for the education of our children.
So our bigger obligation as legislators is to support all children in the public school environment, be it traditional public or public charter. Would you agree with that?
That is, yes, ma'am. I
And
agree.
so if we put this amendment on, we're saying that based on what building you go under, what umbrella you go under, you're different, and we want to treat you different. That's why this amendment does not help the program but hurts it. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
And so as we vote on this, our colleagues need to understand that we're supporting all public school children. We just have our traditional public and our public charter. And I'm a big believer, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that our actuarial numbers are a key driver in this. That it has already said the retirement program is sound, and this $13 million impact to support kids in schools is critical. Would you agree with that?
I will say the actuarial tables are sound. We will have to visit. Now, it's not going to affect the retirement of any teachers right now or into the future, but it will require some attention going into the future. But the consequences of this bill are marginal, to say the least.
I agree. 13 million compared to our biannual budget is something that we need to do to support our students and our teachers that are in public charter schools. So I'm supporting this amendment. I hope we vote down this amendment and support the bill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mr. Lambert, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, would the gentleman yield for a
Does the
question or
gentleman
two?
yield for questions?
I will
Gentleman
yield. Yes,
yields
sir.
for questions.
Representative Tepper, when we talked about this previously, we mentioned the fact that there are a lot of unknowns right now as far as some of the things Chairman Bonham mentioned, as far as other bills that may have an impact eventually on TRS actuarial soundness. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you and I discussed the possible ways in which we could address this, and one of the suggestions I made was to postpone this bill and let us take up an interim study to address the issues of the differences between charter and public, as well as higher education, and who all is paying what and how much, and based on what salary schedules. Did I not suggest that?
You suggested that, yes, sir.
And your response was?
I think we want to move forward with this bill because going into the future, this bill has very little impact on it. Although I agree with you, we do need to look at it going into the future.
And I actually agree with the concept that basically the bill has very little impact on actuarial soundness, but because there's so many unknowns, I felt like it was important to maybe postpone this and do a study during the interim and bring all the stakeholders together and look at ways which we can address the inequities and the unfairness in all three systems, basically to try to address this issue long term, so we have a better idea moving forward just what we need to contribute, what the fund contributes, what the state contribution would be, what teachers are required to pay in, what the employers are required to pay in, and I think that would be a better solution to this. But I appreciate your responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Ms.
I recommend that the membership vote no on this amendment.
Mr. Berry to close on his amendment.
Members, I will tell you that this is not about a war on charter schools. This is about a war of making sure that TRS continues to remain solvent. I move adoption.
The question occurs on the amendment. This will be a record vote. Clerk, ring the bell. Show Mr. Romero voting aye, Mr. Berry voting aye, Mr. Tepper voting no. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 80 ayes and 63 nays, the amendment is adopted.